everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode of When I Grew Up. On today's episode, I'm excited to introduce my guest. His name is Joseph Pack, and he is a school social worker. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, good. And I'm excited to talk to him because one of my close friends has worked with him in the past and has shared with me a little bit about his heart for his students and what he does, his passion. And I have actually known him for a long time. I'm the same age as his youngest sister, and we used to go to church together. But I think it was my dad your Bible study teacher?
He was.
Which is really crazy.
Very fond memory of him. He took us to the Olympics when it was in Atlanta.
My dad did?
Yeah, I remember going to the weightlifting competition.
In 96?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I didn't even go to that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, how are you, Joseph? How have you been?
Yeah, I'm really good. I'm on summer break now. So I'm just kind of chilling and trying to occupy my time with different hobbies and just hanging out with my parents and helping them out.
Nice. Well, thank you for giving me some of your time today to hear more about what it is that you do when you're not on summer break. So like I mentioned in the introduction, you are a school social worker. Now, in my head, I'm like, that's not the same as like DCFS, right?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Although I have worked for them in the past.
What does that stand for again?
Department of Family and Children's Services.
Right. So I know, like, just because I watch a lot of TV, if I'm honest, like that's a social work thing.
Yeah.
But so that's not the same as what
No,
you do.
it's not. Yeah. And often when people think of social workers, they think of someone that works for DFACS.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So could you tell me what it is that you do as a school social worker?
Yeah. And so I actually took some notes and I looked at our official governing body to kind of look at the definition. So basically, how I describe it to people that ask is I'm a mental health consultant.
Okay.
The definition is that we're trained mental health professionals who assist with mental health concerns, behavioral concerns, positive behavioral support, classroom support. We consult teachers, parents, administrators, and sometimes we provide individual and group counseling / therapy. Yeah.
So you're a mental health care provider, kind of.
Yes, exactly. So my role, I definitely consult a lot with the school counselors.
I see.
They will call us if there's like a crisis or they're needing additional support. Because I'm an employee of the district office.
Okay.
And so I kind of represent them and I'm seen as the expert, the mental health expert.
I see. So you don't have a specific school that you work at.
At least in Gwinnett County, the county that I work in, we're assigned a cluster of schools. So I'm assigned the Shiloh cluster, which is the south end of Gwinnett. And within my cluster, I have 7 schools. I have 4 elementary, and then middle and high. I think that comes out. No, 5 elementary, middle and high. So yeah, I just my day to day looks very different. I have assigned days that I'll actually go to the schools, but when counselors or administrators call and they have a crisis, depending on the situation, I'll have to go out and meet or go to that school, meet the student, meet with the staff.
So what is a crisis?
Great question. So crisis could be anything from suicide, any child abuse, neglect issues. Those are kind of the main 2. Or if there's a situation with a parent that can be kind of litigious. So those are the kind of the issues that I deal with. Homelessness is a big issue within my cluster. So providing support, resources for families and the students.
Okay, so if you could kind of break it down for me, because I'm curious. So there's a crisis,
Mm-hmm.
and you go,
Mm-hmm.
and the crisis, for example, you said one of the things that you could be dealing with is neglect, right, or
Mm-hmm.
child abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be like sitting down with the student, or would the parents be involved in this situation? Or initially, what does that look like?
Yeah, so most of the time the school counselors will call me and kind of give me a rundown of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And then either I'll do like a kind of phone consult.
Mm-hmm.
I'll kind of consult them of what the next steps are, or if they have any questions, like procedural questions, the protocol, I'll kind of give them support and guidance. But if it's severe enough, or I feel like the counselor needs additional support, I'll actually go out to the school. In the case of child abuse or neglect, usually I'll kind of meet with the counselor and gather more information.
Mm-hmm.
And if she feels that, or that counselor feels that we need to meet with the student, we'll kind of do a preliminary investigation or fact finding, get more information
Mm-hmm.
so that we can determine whether to make a referral to DFACS, the state
I
agency,
see.
and then kind of go from there. And sometimes we deal with parents that will call the school and say, I know that you guys made the referral. And I kind of coach the counselors on how to respond to the parent and what are kind of our need to know, or who to let share that information with, kind of thing.
That's so interesting. So the school counselor is not the final say, huh? They like refer to you?
Yeah, well, because since I'm at the county office,
Uh-huh.
I'm the county liaison.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So if they don't communicate with me and I don't know about a situation,
Mm-hmm.
and then it blows up, they're going to ask, hey, did you get your school social worker involved? And then if I say no, that's going to look very bad on the school counselor. And so
Wow.
oftentimes I will tell them, hey, I know that you've been a school counselor for a while, but you just need to get me in the boat, and I need to be in the know, because if something happens or if the parent calls the county office, they're going to ask my director and ask, hey, have you spoken to the school counselor about this situation?
Mm-hmm.
And if I haven't, that's not going to be very good for you. So it helps that I have been a school counselor previously. So my counselors know that. And so I know kind of their side of things, how to
Mm-hmm.
operate from a school counseling perspective, and then now learning how to do it from the school social work perspective.
Wow, that's really good to know. I feel like as a new parent myself, that there is
Hmm.
this checks and balances within the public school system that I didn't know that
Yeah,
was
definitely.
there. Is that
Definitely.
something that's always been there? Like,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, probably most of the time, if there was no issues,
right,
then you've definitely never
right.
have interacted with a school counselor other than doing credit checks or talking about academics.
Yeah, I have to admit, I never went to my school counselor, but from what I hear, a lot of people use their school counselor a lot,
Yeah,
which is
definitely.
great
Yeah, it is. It
resource.
is
But
great.
um, so let's go back a little bit, if you don't mind. You mentioned before that before doing a school social worker position, you were a school counselor.
Mhm.
I'm curious to know what made you transition to this job. But before we get into that, I just want to know, like, why did you choose school counseling? Why did you want to work with students? All of it. Tell me all of
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So that is a journey in itself. So like you, I'm a UGA grad. Go
Go
dogs.
dogs.
Yeah. So I originally went in thinking that I was going to do pre-med. I wanted to pursue kind of the helping profession.
Mm.
I don't, like, honestly, looking back, I think freshman year or my first year, I was like depressed and really didn't know the direction I needed to go in.
Right.
And as a first generation college student, being the oldest, I had to figure that stuff out on my own, and not knowing where to start, where to go. So my parents are like typical Korean parents, want you to pursue a career where you can make good money.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do well in some of the courses in the pre-med route, and I don't remember how I got connected with the career center at UGA, but I did a career assessment, met with a career counselor, and she suggested, based on my assessment, either counseling or social work. So she just recommended me to take a social work class, took the class, loved it, just kept on that track. And then after I graduated with my bachelor's in social work, my friends and I, we went to go work for DFACS, like I said.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so I was working in Forsyth County as a foster care case manager. So I worked there for a year. And I think working for DFACS in it of itself is definitely an interesting experience, but working kind of in a rural county where there weren't many Asians, and
right.
And the northern part of the county was very, very rural. I did experience, some pretty uncomfortable situations, seeing Confederate flags, seeing kind of the black caricatures on porches, and people not knowing what I was ethnically. I remember I worked with a Hispanic mom. She thought I was from Central America or something.
Oh.
Yeah. So they definitely did not know what Asian people were or what they. Yeah, and so like
shocking
no
for
frame,
me, but
no frame of reference, right? And so I remember just like driving to meet with my student or my kids on my caseload and dealing with parents and making sure they're kind of working on their case plan towards reunification. So a lot of the parents had drug issues or like they were unstable. And so you were kind of in the middle, like you're looking out for the best interests of the kid, but also working with the parent and trying to support them on their case plan, whatever that is, with being sober, working on parenting classes, getting their finances in order. So it was an interesting experience, but I'm glad that I had my friends there to kind of be a moral support. Right. I definitely learned a lot, and having to testify in court, in juvenile court, on what actions I've done and being accountable for that. So it's definitely like prepared me for the legal system and how to answer questions and when not to say more than, what they're asking, kind of thing. So after that, I went and got my master's and in social work at UGA. I applied for a grant through DFACS where they would pay for your master's and you serve them 2 years of service afterwards. And
wow.
Yeah, so I did that, learned a lot about child welfare, child psychology, and then I ended up going to Hall County DFACS.
So why did you get your master's?
Because with a bachelor's in social work, there's not much that you can do.
Oh, really? Why not?
Because with the master's, you can apply for licensure, your clinical license.
Okay.
And so there's much more that you can do with that. Whereas a bachelor's, you're just looking at case management.
Okay.
So I, recognize that. And I just wanted to get work experience prior to going for my master's.
So that was kind of the plan for you in your head anyways
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely. And so DFACS paid for my master's and then went to Hall County. Hall County is very different. A lot of Hispanics and Latino, Latinx. And so that experience was also very stressful because I worked in a different unit. It was called the Family Preservation Unit. Basically, this is after after families have been found, after child abuse has been substantiated. And so I'm working with them on preventing the student or the child from getting into care, going into foster care. So working on addressing any issues in the house, any drug issues, any like homelessness or finances and parenting classes. So that was stressful because the caseload was very, very high. There was a lot of demands. You had to make contact with the parents every month and collaterals, and just things blew up and being on call. I remember being on call during the weekends.
Gosh.
And like at that time we had, I think, a pager and a cell phone, and just remember getting calls at 3 a.m. in the morning, going to the hospital. I remember there was one situation where like a 5 or 6 year old boy, there was suspicion that he may have been sexually abused, and had the doctor found like blood stains in his underwear. I remember I had to go out and meet with the cops, and yeah, so it was super stressful.
So like, how did you deal with that stress? Like that, I can't even.
Yeah, I as a result of that, I got acid reflux.
Oh my
and so
gosh.
it took a toll on my health. And I just remember thinking, I can't do this. And one of my coworkers mentioned like school counseling. And I was like, okay, I'm going to look into it. And I did research for the EDS, educational specialist at UGA for school counseling. Actually, the deadline had passed to apply, and I emailed the director or whoever was over admissions and said, hey, I realized that the deadline passed, but I'm still interested. Is there any way I could still apply? And they said, yes, apply. And so like I applied and got in, and so made that transition to school counseling. And that was, it's a related field, but it's very different. And that experience was a good life lesson, because I guess up until that point, I had always been like highly favored, or like I got along with people, and
I can see that.
Yeah. And so like when I just remember during that program, I really wanted to be at a high school. And there was only one person that was in a classmate of mine that was in a high school in Gwinnett. I remember reaching out to her and saying, hey, can you set me up with an internship at your school? And she was kind of reluctant, but she was willing to help out. Long story short, it was not a good experience.
Oh no.
Yeah. So like, I guess like, yeah, it was, I don't know what happened exactly, but I just remember like not going in there, not thinking that people were going to support me. And I remember one of the counselors that I worked with, we did a small group together. She like called me out in front of the students, and I had to confront her afterwards. And just, I felt like the girl that set me up with the internship, he was like planting seeds of doubt among the other counselors.
Oh, that's so. Why
yeah. And
that?
so like through that, I learned a life lesson, like that people are people. Like no matter helping field or whatever, we're all broken and selfish. And so and part of it was I think that my clinical skills were a lot stronger than hers, and kind of going in like maybe I don't know, maybe I approached it wrong, or I don't know. So definitely learned about politics through that,
I see.
and navigating that. So yeah, and then
Sorry,
after
when was this internship? At what point?
this was after my or during my EDS, which was
Okay,
in
okay.
2009.
Okay. So during
My
your
studies for school
okay,
counseling,
got
yeah.
it.
And so because part of that is that you have to intern at a school, and I wanted to do high school, and
Right.
so
Okay.
yeah, she set me up with that. But nonetheless, it was a good life lesson to learn about politics, to learn that, you know, you're going to have to manage and navigate relationships.
Mm,
And sometimes people are not going to always have your best interest at
mm.
heart. And how do you manage that? And so after that, I just remember the economy was not good, but and I wasn't able to get a job in school counseling. So that was kind of a stressful point for me.
Mm.
I felt like, honestly, I felt like I was blacklisted in the county.
Because
'Cause
of that experience?
yeah, because I wasn't able to get a good recommendation. Yeah. And so, yeah, I don't know.
Oh
Like,
man, this must have been so discouraging.
it
Like
was very discouraging. I
I
remember talking to the head counselor and just saying, like, I don't understand what's going on here. Like, I'm asking for feedback, and like you guys are not like giving me any feedback. I don't know. This is a completely new field for me.
huh.
And, are there things that I can do differently? And mind you, I was working part time as a core counselor. I would go into the homes of students that were in juvenile justice with Department of Juvenile Justice,
Mhm.
and work with them and their families on counseling. And so it was super stressful. Yeah, so that was a great life lesson.
So
And
how
then
long after that did it take you to find a
it
job?
took me a while. I want to say a year at least.
Oh, that's a long time.
Yeah, and so but during that time I was able to do like short um or long-term subbing for school counselors that
Okay.
went on maternity leave.
Okay.
And so it was, God has a plan for everything. And so I ended up doing that at a school that was nearby,
Mhm.
and a middle school, and had a great experience, did well, learned a lot, and was able to get good recommendations. And and after that period, I got a job as a school social worker, not a school counselor, which is
What?
weird. Yeah. And so I ended up at a psycho ed center. So I don't know.
A what? I'm sorry, what?
So it's a psycho ed center.
What is that?
Basically, this is a school for students with severe mental health and behavioral
I'm
issues.
sorry. I didn't mean to sound
No,
insensitive. I
no, no.
just I
Yeah.
just was like I've never heard these terms before, so I think I thought
Yeah,
I
no. And I don't
understood.
think that's no one has I didn't know what it was prior to working there. And so basically this is the place that students go to prior to residential treatment, like a
I see.
psychiatric
Okay.
residential treatment center.
And these are just young kids, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
middle to high, or like 21, I think was the age cutoff
Mhm.
for special ed students. So I got a job there. It was quite an experience. The unit that I was in charge of as a school social worker was the autistic unit,
Mm.
and there were students in there that were like 21, 18. Some of them had some severe behavioral issues. I just remember the first day, like as the students are getting off the bus, my my administrator, the assistant principal, I was greeting the kids as they were coming off, and there was this one particular student that the staff would, like, as he was getting off the bus, they would kind of like move to the side. I
Okay.
was like, as if they were scared of him. And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, watch. At the time, I was wearing glasses. And she was like, yeah, make sure you hold on to your glasses because he will take your glasses and break it. And so, like, I was like,
Oh.
shock. Yeah. And just like the different behaviors that I saw, they had like these seclusion rooms. Some of the students would go in there stripped down naked and try to pee on you
Oh my
and
goodness.
spit on you and scratch you. And like, mind you, some of the kids were like really small, but they don't know their own strength. They don't have the capacity to kind of control themselves.
Uh-huh.
And so like we had big grown men that would have to restrain these students, like 2 or 3 men.
Oh my gosh.
And so and when I was there, one of the, not in the unit that I was in, but the middle school unit, one of the students stabbed a paraprofessional in the restroom when they were by themselves, and she kind of planned and plotted that. And it was
Oh
something out of
my
a horror
goodness.
movie. Yeah. And so I just remember like the restroom was all the way in the back of the building. I remember just running over there, and like the men were taking off their shirts to like to
Like stop
like
the bleeding?
yeah, stop the bleeding. There was blood everywhere.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I was like, Lord, I don't think I can work here anymore. And I just remember the staff. We had a faculty meeting, and the staff were like sharing their concerns. We need metal detectors, blah blah blah. And I just remember praying to God, like, I this is not my calling. It was a
Mm.
great learning experience, but I can't work here. And then I think 9 months later, I got a call from the county director,
Mm-hmm.
and I was recruited to Peachtree Ridge High School by the assistant principal. And I
Oh
was like,
wow.
thank you, God. Even though I was a pay cut, I was like, I'll gladly take it.
How did you get recruited? They just knew you
Well,
were on people's radar?
he was looking for something very specific.
Uh-huh.
He wanted an Asian male school counselor.
So are there a lot of
Preferably
those in Georgia?
no, no. And so
Okay.
like the director of her counseling, she was like, "Hey, Joseph, have a request for an Asian male counselor, and you're
Oh
the only one.
wow.
And so, would you be interested?" I was like, "Yes." And so I met with him and the principal, and from there it was history. And so I ended up at
Man.
Peachtree Ridge. Yeah,
Well, sorry, before we get into the Peachtree Ridge stuff, because
yeah.
I want to, but going back to your previous jobs, um, you said you were having trouble finding a job in this as a school counselor, so you took that job at the psycho ed school or
Hmm.
place,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
and as a social worker. But is it like so your master's in social work and your master's in school counseling, the marriage of the two allowed for you to get those types of positions?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So the educational specialist, it's kind of weird. It's almost like a master's, but it's more advanced.
Okay.
So
More
that,
advanced than a master's?
yeah, I
Okay.
mean, within the education
Okay, okay.
realm, it's considered higher than a master's.
Okay.
So after getting that degree, I could pursue both routes because I got a certificate both in school counseling and school social work.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so through that experience, I mean, because of that, I could go either way. And at the time, I thought I was going to get a school counseling job, but
Mhm.
then I went and got a school social work job.
Okay, I see. I see.
Yeah.
Um, so like going back to the very beginning of your journey, of you
Hmm.
even going to the career center, first of all, man, major props to you. I
Yeah.
feel like more people don't take advantage of those types of resources. I kind of wish I did. But after taking, doing an assessment, and do you know why she suggested that?
Based on my results, it was definitely leaning towards like psychology counseling.
I see. Okay.
And she was just like, you should try social work classes.
So, and then you said you loved your social work class.
Yeah, definitely.
Why did you love it? Like, what was
Um,
like,
just the whole because I enjoyed psychology
uh-huh.
101 and abnormal psych, and just I don't know, just the helping, compassionate part of me, and just and even like the growth that I experienced through the classes. And like, for example, I was super shy, did not like public speaking. I just remember the first presentation that I gave, I was
Uh-huh.
so nervous. And just, yeah, just the community around the classmates and being around like-minded people that wanted to bring change to the world
Mm,
at a micro and macro level. And so I felt like that was kind of my calling.
that's
And
awesome.
yeah, and so I stuck with it. It was an interesting to explain to my parents what that is, social work. And
Yeah, what
so
was their response?
I mean, they didn't really know what it was,
Mm,
and they were kind of concerned, like from a financial standpoint.
sure.
But I think now they kind of understand that this is kind of my calling.
Yeah.
This is where I need to be.
I mean, I feel like if you can handle all of those stories that you just told me and still want to do school counseling and school social work, it is definitely your calling.
Yeah, I mean, I have some crazy stories. Yeah.
I mean, and just like I just feel like that type of atmosphere, I know my personality, it would be difficult for me to separate my emotion from my work. I don't
Hmm.
know how it is
Yeah.
for you. Could you elaborate a little bit on that for yourself?
Yeah. So, there are situations that I think for the most part I can kind of compartmentalize, but there are some situations that definitely impact me. For
Mm,
example, there was a situation that this past school year where one of my elementary students was having a difficult time. And
mm,
it happened to be her, um, I guess, the anniversary of her mother's death
mhm,
by suicide.
mm,
And so she was kind of, I guess she kind of knew that it was around the same time.
mhm,
And she was experiencing some emotions and kind of acting out a little bit.
mhm,
I remember the school counselor and I meeting with her father, and the we met with the father first to kind of get some information. Turns out that so mom was at home cooking, dad and the girl were going to go for a walk,
mhm.
and that's when mom committed suicide
Oh
in the
my
home.
goodness.
And mom had a picture of the daughter in her hand,
Mm.
and they walk in on mom, so the little girl saw it with dad,
Oh my
the
gosh.
aftermath. And so just hearing that story and just seeing the father, just, yeah, I could tell that he hasn't fully like grieved. And then so we called the student, and she's old enough to kind of respond and to questions and kind
Mm.
of share her thoughts and feelings. When she walked in, I just remember her going straight to her father, not thinking about herself and just comforting her father.
Mm.
I almost lost it in the meeting. I almost just like started crying, and then um, luckily I was able to kind of keep it together and kind of console and provide resources for the father,
Mm.
and really make a recommendation that he get counseling himself.
Yeah.
And just remember talking to my coworker about the situation. She was like, yeah, that happens. Like there are some situations that strike a chord with you, and we're human, and it's okay to experience that fully and cry or whatever you need to, if you need to step out. And so those kind of situations definitely, I don't know, with the little ones, definitely impacts me. I am in therapy for myself, and having coworkers to kind of talk to and decompress or process things with definitely helps. And I've understood more, or I'm understanding more and more the importance of self-care and what that is. And for me, a big part of self-care is physical exercise, but also spirituality, praying and being in silence and solitude, and having someone to kind of talk to.
Yes.
So my therapist definitely has given me a good perspective and just allowed me to decompress.
Yes, no, I think that's really important. I have other friends that actually are also in therapy or counseling, and they've talked to me about it. And I just feel like maybe everyone needs a
Oh yeah,
therapist.
definitely. I'm a huge advocate for that.
Like just for mental health and just to really, I mean, I'm an extroverted thinker by
Yeah.
nature. And I think for me, just to have a non-biased person
Oh
that,
yeah,
sitting
definitely.
in front of me as I extrovert my thoughts, seems like a really healthy thing. And I too, have a relationship with God, and that is good. But I feel like, for me too, I am a person that needs tangible things in front of me, and it just seems like a really good way to take care of yourself and be able to do your work well.
Hmm.
Especially what you do, like to do it well and not get burnt out,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
That's really
And
good.
the biggest lesson I've learned recently is to like fully experience emotions and
Mm.
not repress those things. And yeah, so I'm trying to be better at doing that with the help of my therapist. And I'm part of a support group that where we kind of challenge each other and encourage each other to do that and
Mm.
share resources and talk and consult each other.
Are these is your support group other schools social workers or no?
No, actually, they're just they themselves are big proponents of mental health,
Mm.
and we're just kind of on the same wavelength with
So
that.
important to have those
Yeah,
people around
and
you.
so like, yeah, it's been really good to kind of come together monthly and process and talk through things.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
That's awesome. Okay, well, sorry, we got on a little bit of a
no,
tangent, but
you're fine.
um so you are a school counselor at Peachy Ridge at this point in the story.
Hmm.
And that's what you wanted, right? You wanted a high school.
Yes, exactly.
So
So
it was God's plan.
yeah, I mean, it was, now looking back, God just orchestrated everything. And
Mm,
like the experiences that I gathered at the psycho ed center were invaluable. Like
mm,
working with autistic students and seeing them kind of act out and how to manage their behaviors, that was priceless. Like not every school counselor had that experience. And having worked at DFACS and also being a core counselor, going into the homes of these students, particularly a lot of
mm-hmm,
male students of color that have gotten in trouble with the law,
mm,
and just seeing the family dynamics. And part of the reason why I wanted to do school counseling was I felt like that was first of all, that's the place that the kids spend the most time at.
yeah, absolutely.
And I felt like I would have the most impact with the students. And so, yeah, God kind of orchestrated it all. Peachtree Ridge was, yeah, it was a godsend. Very diverse, um, yeah, ethnically, class wise, and just, yeah, it was a great atmosphere, great team.
How long were you a school counselor at Peachy Ridge before you shifted your job to
Six
social work?
years.
6 years. That seems like a long time for a school counselor. Is
Yeah,
that?
it is. Well, some of the school counselors will actually retire
Okay.
at certain schools. And so, yeah, it kind of depends. Sometimes they'll move. At least within our county, you have to stay put for 3 years. And then after the 3 years, you can make a change or grade level change or go to a school that's maybe closer to your home if you've moved. And so I will say working at Peachtree Ridge was pivotal in my development professionally
Mm.
and just personally. I learned and grew a lot there. Um, and during that time, 2013 was when I started my doctorate program.
Are you
Well,
Dr. Joseph Peck?
yes, I
Oh,
am.
my bad. You should
No,
have
you're
told
fine.
me.
No, you're fine.
No, man, those credentials are important. You worked hard for
I
them.
did. I worked 5 years for that.
You should have told me. Okay, Dr. Peck. Sorry.
No, no, no.
But that's awesome. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay, so your doctorate in sorry, what was the
Counseling and
counseling?
student personnel services.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so like it honestly, it was crazy what I was doing during that time.
What
So
do you mean?
it's a part-time program,
Uh-huh.
the part-time PhD program. I was working full-time,
Oh my goodness.
and then my parents were building a house from the ground up at that time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I was the main one kind of helping them. And
Right, because you're the oldest too in your
yeah, I'm the
family.
oldest, and my parents are kind of crazy in that they're ultimate DIYers. They want to do everything themselves.
Oh, that's cool though. I like that.
Yeah, it can be cool and stressful. um, so they bought a piece of property. We had it for probably like 8 years or
Uh-huh.
so. They were saving up enough cash to kind of build their dream home.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I learned a lot about building homes. And
Wait, hold up. So you mean you guys were building the house?
yeah, I
Like
mean, my
like
dad
you
was
and
the
your
general
family?
contractor. Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. I
Yeah.
thought
No, no, no. And I mean, he's pretty handy and he's
Uh-huh.
done like renovations on our previous home, like our
Uh-huh.
childhood home, but never to the extent of building from the ground up.
I
Like,
mean, that's crazy, but really special, I feel like. That's
yeah. And so, like,
awesome.
we definitely learned a lot along the way. And, some of the contractors are, you know, they could tell we were very green, new
Right.
to building homes. And so they would like to take advantage or try to
Oh,
take advantage. And so
yeah.
we have had, it was a long journey. It was a
Yeah.
3 year process. I'm actually at their home right now. And so
So it's completed, I guess. It's
it's
done.
completed. It's very nice.
Nice.
Yeah. So they're very happy to be in a big home with a lot of land. And so, yeah,
That they built.
that they built from the ground
Yes.
up. I mean, the stuff that they were doing, I just remember obviously the things that professionals had to do, we had to hire,
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
like grading the lot,
Okay.
preparing the lot, pouring in the concrete walls, and doing the framing,
Sure.
electric and plumbing. We had to get professionals, but
Mhm.
and the drywall. But everything else we did by ourselves.
That's insane.
We
I can't even
installed hardwood floors. We
imagine that.
installed the cabinets.
Oh
I
my
remember
goodness.
in the middle of summer, my parents were waterproofing the basement walls with like this black waterproofing sealant, and they came covered in like all this black tar. I was like, oh my god.
Oh man, but then all their kids are grown, so it's like their own project. That's fun.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my brother and I helped a lot, and sister
Yeah.
helped, and so
That's really fun, I feel like. But
yeah.
going back to what you were saying about finding contractors, I know that it's like such a difficult experience, especially when they know what they're doing and they think you don't know what they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
what you're
Mm-hmm.
doing, because
Mm-hmm.
we too had a really terrible experience with my basement. And I just remember thinking, why are people so untrustworthy? I'm so naive.
Exactly. And so like I had to come up with contracts and like just know not to give money prior to the work being done.
Yes.
We did have one contractor that like took money and then he passed away and all this crazy stuff.
No.
Yeah. And so like he left his truck on our property and I don't know. It was
That's crazy.
There were so many crazy stories.
Oh my gosh. I thought my story was bad, but that's pretty bad.
Yeah, and like the guy that did the brick on our house, they did a shoddy job and I remember we were like fighting in front of our house.
Uh-huh.
And I just remember he was getting angry and he like my mom and I were talking to him and like kind of arguing with him and he like it seemed like he was going to hit my mom and so like I stood in front of him.
Right.
And luckily like our where we live there's a police station nearby and police are always going up and down the street and so he just right at the right time a policeman comes by, he whistles and flags down the policeman comes and like he hears both our sides of the story and he's like, yeah, you guys are right. I was like telling him I'm not going to pay you till you finish the job. And so
that's crazy.
He ended up leaving kind of angry and I was like, my God, thank you that cop was there. That's so insane. Crazy stuff.
No, crazy stuff. Oh my gosh. But yes, anyway, so a lot was going on during this time of your life when you were getting your doctorate.
It was super stressful.
Oh man, but you got it done.
I got it done. After 5 years, it was supposed to be a 3-year program.
Mm-hmm.
I remember getting like 3 to 4 hours of sleep every night. Coffee was my friend. I mean, I was still working and like we had night events like parent nights and different things. And, coming home from work and then just writing or studying and going to class. And
do you enjoy studying though? Is that something you like?
I do like learning.
Okay.
Yeah, but the writing, the dissertation was not fun.
No, that does not sound fun at all.
Yeah.
But so basically your whole time at Peachtree Ridge was you doing all these things at the same time and going to school to get your doctorate degree.
Exactly.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, so while you're at Peachtree Ridge, could you just tell me briefly, like, what it's like to be a school counselor? Because for me, you know, I do remember going to my school counselor like one time, because I was just like, you know, a person that just did what I was supposed to do and kept my head down doing it. But I wish I had taken more advantage of my school counselor because a mutual friend of ours is a school counselor and she tells me a bit about her work. And I'm like, oh, you guys do that? But anyways, I remember I just went to her because I really wanted to change my class. But then, like, she convinced me not to, so I didn't. But that was the only time I went to her. And I remember my school counselors were broken up into, like, your last name.
Exactly, yeah. So at Peachtree Ridge, we had 7 counselors. And we had 1 designated counselor for the 9th grade, or actually 2.
Okay.
And then the 5 of us downstairs, we were broken up by alphabet 10th through 9th grade. And so when I came on, my good coworker and I came on, I had a choice to pick the part of the alphabet that had a lot of Korean students or a diverse group of students.
Okay, so what did you pick?
I picked intentionally the latter part of the alphabet. I had SAR through Z.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I had some Korean students, but not as many as my coworker that had like the L's through M's.
P.
She had all the key M's, Lee's, Parks. And so
I mean, Peachtree Ridge is pretty heavily populated with Asian Americans, right?
Very much so. There's there probably more Korean, but there were Chinese students, Vietnamese students, some Southeast Asian students as well. At the time when I was there, it was really diverse. Think the numbers were like 33% white, 25% African American, 24% Asian.
Oh, wow.
12% Hispanic, and the rest other.
That is really diverse.
Yeah, and I just remember mix. Like some of my white students saying, we don't feel like we're the majority. And, you know, based on the numbers, they're right.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it was a shock for me just to kind of be there and kind of hear the Asian students' stories. And like at lunch, they would sell like ramen noodles during lunch and kim. That was so foreign to me. Like,
because there were so many Asian people?
Yeah, because there were so many Asian students.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, they were selling like shinramyeon and kim. And
that is like, shocking. I'm shocked too.
Yeah, and non-Asian students were buying this stuff too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so completely different story from me growing up.
Me too, yeah.
And being embarrassed about bringing my ethnic food. But to answer your story, or your question regarding what school counselors do, for us as the 10th through 12th grade counselors, a lot of it is academic. So we would meet with all juniors, all the seniors to kind of go over credits, talk about colleges, talk about their classes, plan for classes. We did do some crisis counseling too, meeting with students that had suicidal ideation or there was suspicion of child abuse or neglect. Students that were self-harming, meaning they were cutting themselves or engaging in other kind of risky behaviors. And also just like students on your caseload that you build rapport with and doing check-ins with. So each day could look very different, but we did have like certain timelines that we had to meet with all the students. So we tried our best to touch with all of the students. So at least all the 11th and 12th grade students to go over credits, make sure they're caught up with their credits and plan for their classes, know what they're doing in terms of college planning, SAT, ACT, AP courses, any questions that they may have. So the 10th graders were neglected. And then I just remember us having a concerted effort to meet with those students earlier.
I see.
And we would go into the classrooms and do classroom lessons on what to expect for graduation, what are the graduation requirements, what are things that you need to be doing to kind of plan for life after high school.
Really? That's what school counselors do? No one checked in on me. I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, it's very different from when you and I grew up. I just remember my school counselor just sitting in the corner and not really doing much.
So they're very proactive these days.
Yes.
Okay.
Very much so.
That's great.
A lot of paperwork.
On your end.
Yes. We had to do credit checks, set up meetings. If we did parent-teacher conferences in the afternoons, we were often responsible for documenting those and meeting with special ed students or, you know, if parents wanted to meet with us to kind of talk about classes or schedule changes, we were kind of the gatekeepers for that. And so, or if the students were like depressed or not motivated, sometimes parents would reach out to us, kind of seek and consult and sometimes meet with the student, with the parent, and do like brief family counseling or individual counseling.
So through all that, you know, time at Peachtree Ridge as a high school counselor, so what did you like about it?
I enjoyed seeing the growth. So like being with the students from 10th through 12th grade.
Yeah, because you were there for 6 years too, so you get to see people graduate.
And so like the relationships that I had with the students and And when they came to their senior year, like them coming and celebrating with me, their
Yeah.
acceptance to college or getting scholarships, and just seeing the growth. To this day, I keep in touch with some of my students,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, just sharing in their struggles and their celebrations, like their victories, and some of the students writing handwritten cards. And I have those to this day. I'm very sentimental as a person. And so, and seeing students out in public and just them thanking me for all the work the help that I gave them,
Yeah. No,
that
definitely.
in itself was so priceless.
Mm.
And I just remember there's two particular students that stick out to me. In 10th grade, one of the students was kind of having suicidal thoughts and just had a lot going on. He was undocumented, very intelligent.
Mm.
Um, he was like the class president, and he really wanted to go to Emory, and he parents just didn't have the money, but he
Mm.
got a scholarship, ended up going to a different school. And then here just recently, he was able to transfer to Emory
Oh,
and get the
great.
full scholarship. And yeah, just seeing that growth and writing the recommendations for him, and
Yeah.
um, him understanding the importance of mental health.
Mm.
And when I first met with him, I kind of, was sharing that with him. And when I met with him recently, he came to that realization himself, and just to see that growth and to celebrate with him
Mm.
that he's able to go to his dream school and do the things that he wants. And so,
So
yeah,
when you provide advice for kids that come in with like depression or just some sort of mental health issue, anxiety, stress, just being overwhelmed, I know high school can be a really overwhelming time of a person's life and a
definitely.
lot of transition and change happening within those adolescent years. Do you find that they are receptive to the advice that you give?
Um, it depends on the student and the maturity level.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I feel like all they need is someone to listen to them,
Sure. Mm-hmm.
because a lot of the times those particular students are put a lot of pressure on themselves, and their parents put a lot of pressure on them. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kind of a sounding board, and I will ask questions to kind of get them to think about their thoughts and their thought process, and challenge them. I think a great therapist is someone that gets the student or client to come to the realization themselves,
Sure, yeah, that
right?
makes
And
sense.
so,
I think that would
um,
be the most impactful for the person
yeah,
doing the
definitely. And
talking,
so
yeah.
I'm just an objective observer, and ask probing questions, and empathize with them, and try to, yeah, help them to relieve any pressure, any feelings. And so,
So the questions that you ask in these situations, is that part of the training that you received through your education as well?
yeah, I mean, for example, with suicidal students, there is like a protocol that we use.
Okay.
There's a scale that we ask questions like, have you thought about killing yourself within the past month? And
Mm,
based on how they score, we'll meet with the student and their parents and ask the parent to come and take them to get evaluated.
I see. Okay.
Um, so there is that kind of protocol. But if they're depressed, like, I'll just ask kind of standard questions based on our training,
Mm-hmm.
and assess whether it's severe enough to call the parent in to have them evaluated, or call the parent. Regardless, we're going to contact the parent and offer counseling resources. Um, and as our role as a school counselor, we're not therapists per se. Some of us do have licenses where we can provide therapy, but
Okay.
because of our caseloads being like 500 plus students, it's impossible
Right.
for us
Right.
to offer one-on-one therapy
Right.
weekly so we often refer out to other therapists or in the community.
Or would they, if it's serious, would they refer to their school social worker?
Yeah, it could
Okay.
be. And like the school social worker, they often have multiple schools, so they
Right.
can't provide ongoing therapy.
Mm-hmm.
They'll encourage and provide list of counseling resources.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why switch? You liked your job, didn't you?
That is a great question. I think I just needed a change,
Mm.
and things within our department, we got new leadership. Um, it wasn't the best environment, and I wanted to get my clinical license so that so that I can be a therapist and offer
Mm.
counseling on the side.
Wow.
And so I'm
And your
working towards
education
that.
just keeps going, huh?
Yeah, exactly, right? And so because with my licensure, I have to be in the field of social work
Okay.
for like 3 years or
I
so.
see. Okay.
And so this next school year will be the 3rd year.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm getting supervision weekly, and so hopefully I'll get my license soon.
Wow.
And I am looking to make a career change. I'm not sure. I feel
Uh-huh.
like that's where God's leading me.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I want to be like I don't know if you're familiar with Brene Brown.
No.
So she has written a lot of books on vulnerability, daring greatly, New York Times bestseller.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Basically, she's like an speaker influencer
Okay.
on mental health. So that is the dream, to
Like
do
to be
something like
like a
a male version
speaker.
of her.
Oh, that's
Yeah, yeah,
awesome.
writing books and speaking to audiences, and also doing therapy. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, when that happens, please come back to my podcast
Yes,
and have
definitely.
another.
Definitely.
Well, that's awesome. I just feel like, well, if that's where you want to go, I know that those things will happen because I can tell this is your calling,
Yeah, yeah, I
really
appreciate that.
impacting young lives and supporting people in their mental health, which, now more than ever, I think, if I'm honest, I think, in a Korean American household, mental health isn't addressed as much as it should be, especially my background. And, I grew up as a competitive figure skater.
Mhm,
I remember going to some sports counseling because of the overwhelming pressure and stress that I experienced as a
mhm,
competitor.
mhm,
But I think I was young and
mhm,
my parents were in really unfamiliar waters as well. And so they
mhm,
didn't really know how to deal with that as well. And
mhm,
looking back, I think I could have really benefited from
mhm,
having a counselor. And
mhm.
it was like, I remember sitting with this one therapist, and I was, again, like in middle school or something. And my parents were sitting next to me. So I felt like
Oh, wow.
I don't
That's
want
not a
us to
great
talk about
setup.
anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyways, all that to say, I'm so appreciative to know that the future of my kids, in the public school system has this support from the public school, right? As for school counselors and the social workers that exist there. So as a school social worker, I know you're coming up on your 3rd year. Have you liked the change? Has it been much different or?
It is very different.
Okay.
So when I was at Peachtree Ridge, my school social worker, he and I are friends.
Mm-hmm.
And he's an older gentleman, very intelligent, very spiritual, and also very savvy. And so like he recommended me to pursue school social work
Mm-hmm.
because I had a desire to pursue leadership And he felt like it would be a great stepping stone towards that. So as a school social worker, like I was explaining, you're kind of that mental health consultant. You're seen as the expert, the mental health expert, and you represent the district office. And so when you're stepping into these school buildings, they see you in a different light.
I see.
Compared to the school counselor.
I can see that.
And so I have 7 schools, and in the beginning, it's just rapport building and relationship building. And so I'm trying to manage or gain a sense of the school culture, meaning, how is the principal? How are the leaders? Who's really in charge? And how do the school counselors and the administrators interact? What's that relationship like? And how do I manage that? And so it was a lot of learning in that regard, because I didn't know the politics of the school, and me coming. And when he said that, they're going to see you as the expert, and sometimes they may be threatened by that. And like me coming in as a young guy who has my doctorate, they're going to be even more kind of on their toes. And so I definitely did experience that. There were times where things were misconstrued, or they felt like if I corrected people on the protocols, they take offense to it. And so, like, prior to that, I'm very direct and kind of blunt.
Okay.
And so I've learned how to communicate things in it's not so much a tactful manner, but like a diplomatic manner.
No, yeah, that's important, I feel like, especially working with people that are trying to help other people, and then someone comes in, and I understand. And, we're all broken, right? Like you mentioned before.
Exactly. And so that was the hardest part. And, the counselors who I work with a lot, they're already kind of on guard. They don't know if they can trust me. Do I know what I'm talking about, kind of thing. It definitely helped that I had that school counseling background. So they knew that I knew where they were coming from, what it was like to be a school counselor.
Yeah.
And so now I have a great relationship with my counselors, my administrators. I know how to kind of navigate the school culture. And so it was definitely a learning experience. I know how to kind of communicate things in a way that lets people know that I'm being firm, but also on their side.
Yeah, sure.
And that I'm there to support and not, get anyone in trouble or, So it's, it's definitely an experience. And the cluster of schools that I work for, it's a Title I school. So basically that means that I forgot the percentage, but a lot of the students are on free or reduced lunch.
Okay.
So a lot of poverty, homelessness, and it's predominantly Black area. Not many Asian staff members. And so when they see me come in, the one day a week there, I'm sure I've gotten weird looks. And so when I meet with students, they're like, who are you? And what do you do? Kind of thing.
Oh, man.
So it's definitely been a challenge, but a good challenge. I've definitely learned and grown a lot through this experience. I feel like I have a good handle on the job and kind of the duties that come with it.
Just to be in a place where, you are literally the minority, and then, students are looking to open up to you as well. I feel like that would be extremely challenging.
Yeah. And like oftentimes I'm meeting with kids only once or twice because I'm called in for crisis. And so I don't have that rapport.
Right.
And so I have to develop that level of rapport and trust with the students.
Immediately.
Yeah, on the spot. And that is very difficult.
And have you found ways to do that?
Um, I, sometimes yes and no. I think for the most part, if the students know that you're coming up from a place of like love and support,
Sure, yeah.
that they students can sense if
I was
you're
gonna
being
say,
genuine.
yeah,
Yeah,
kids know. They know
yeah,
right away.
yeah. And so if you're genuine, they can sense that, and just being that open space for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm shocked at the level of impact that I've had on some students, only meeting with them once or twice.
Yeah.
Like when I go back into the building and
Mm-hmm.
walking through, they'll come up to me and say, "Oh, hey, Dr. Pack," and like give me a hug, or remember my name, and see how I'm doing, and I check in with them. And so yeah, it's always nice to get that kind of affirmation.
Definitely. And just
Yeah.
see I don't know how to, like, the fruition of your investment
Yeah.
into people's lives, I think is extremely a blessing, encouraging, and just rewarding, right?
Yeah.
It
And
is.
oftentimes we don't get to see that. It's
Yeah.
rare for us as a school social worker.
Mm-hmm.
In school counseling, it's easier to see that kind of growth and development because you're in the building,
Right.
you're a
Yes.
staple, and I'm only like I have designated days that I'll go to the schools, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I'm only there for a few hours, and so I don't get to develop that relationship with
Mm-hmm.
those students. Only if I open a case with the family and the student, that I, have a concerted effort to interact and develop that relationship with them.
Yeah. Do you feel like there is a need for, are there a lot of male counselors?
No, there aren't, and so it's rare, and I do feel like there's a need for more male counselors,
Mm.
especially
It's
in
rare? Like,
yeah,
really?
yeah. They're not very. I think when I was in the county, there was like maybe out of 200, there was like maybe 20
Man,
to
we need
30.
more male counselors.
Yeah, we do definitely.
Oh my goodness. What about Asian American counselors?
There were few. Our mutual friend.
Uh-huh.
I think there were maybe a couple others, but yeah,
Oh
not
man.
many
So we need
Asian.
more Asian American male counselors.
Yeah, I think I was one of two.
That's crazy. But not. It's crazy but not. I
No,
think
yeah, yeah.
I mean for the main purpose of me even doing this podcast, one, I do think there's lack of exposure. I mean, it's not like our parents, especially if they're first generation immigrants,
Hmm.
are like, be a school counselor, you
Yeah,
know?
definitely.
So, I mean, this whole conversation was extremely eye opening. I feel like we could talk more,
Hmm.
but we are coming up on our end of our time together.
Hmm.
But before we end, I wanted to ask you, Dr. Pack, Dr. Joe, um, like, do you have any advice for somebody maybe thinking about going into school counseling or social work, or just advice in general for young people listening?
Yeah, definitely. I would encourage those that are interested in the field to reach out to myself or people that
Mm,
are actually in the field. I think if I could do things differently, I would have sought out a mentor
mm,
and just really explored more and took risks, especially during the time that I was kind of unemployed and trying to figure things out. Just exploring interests, reaching
mhm,
out to people, and connecting with those, and just being exposed to different things. I- When I was a high school counselor, that's what I would recommend to my students. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
what are your values? What is important to you? And like, what do you see yourself doing? Just
Mhm,
expose yourself to different things.
yeah.
And like through this podcast, I think it's great that you're exposing the different fields. And it's a journey. I think with mental health professions, it's also a personal journey. I've definitely grown a lot myself through this process, and just healing myself and realizing some things about myself, and helping others along the way. Particularly my family.
Yeah.
Was able to kind of encourage my mom to get therapy herself, and super happy that she did it. It was really helpful for her, and just our family as a whole.
Yes.
I think a lot of our parents could benefit from therapy, and a lot of the issues that they kind of dealt with definitely are passed down to us. And mental health is important, and self-care is important.
Yes.
Just that journey, be on that journey.
That journey. I like that.
Self-love and discovery, and just know that things will work out in the end. Don't try to force things, or and figure out.
That's good advice just for me.
Yeah, I'm still, to this day, I'm still trying to figure the next step. And so it's definitely a journey. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yes.
Connect with others, network, and talk to others, and try to get as much advice as you need, and figuring out on your own.
Yeah, great. Yeah. That's really awesome. Thank you. This was amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Pack. I'm going to keep calling you Dr. Pack.
Sounds so weird.
It does, but I know the kind of work that goes into getting those types of degrees, and those are blessings from God, and I truly believe that. So thank you again for your time today.
Yeah, thank you.
I really enjoyed it. Hopefully, when you are the next male version of Brene Brown. Is that right?
Brene Brown.
Brene Brown.
Yeah.
You'll be back.
Yes, I will. Definitely. This is where it all started.
Don't forget about me.
No, definitely not.
All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. If you did and you have any more questions, like Dr. Pack had mentioned before, please feel free to reach out. I'll do my best to connect you. And you can email at podcastwigu@gmail.com, or just direct message in the Instagram or social media. Thanks again, guys. Until next time, bye.
Bye.